unraveling on Israel's northern border. Both Syria and Lebanon, bordering Israel to the north, both seem to be unraveling. However, both Israel and the United States have very different postures towards both. Syria, it looks like Israel's being asked to pull back or at least calm down our actions by the White House. Whereas Lebanon, a special envoy of the White House who was in Israel just yesterday, is due to be in Beirut, where she's going to deliver a very clear message. Either Hezbollah disarms or Israel attacks. To unpack these, today my guest is returning guest wAmiad Cohen, the head of the Israel Liberty Center, one of Israel's leading institutions on examining the Middle East and building our most important research, which is leadership. We unpack both of these stories. We go deep inside to understand what's happening in Syria. Why is President Trump asking Israel to back down? How is the Middle East related to the Far East? And what's coming next in Lebanon? Should Israel be using soft diplomacy, soft power regarding our arms sales to countries who condemn us publicly and hug us privately? Stay tuned. This was a fascinating discussion. I'd like you to click like if you like it and leave some comments. Thank you. wAmiad, good to have you back in the studio.
Thank you for having me again.
wAmiad, I want to talk with you about the North. Two countries in the north, side by side, Syria to Israel's northeast and Lebanon due north, both of whom are neighbors, but vastly different countries, and both of them seem to be unraveling. Yet Washington's response over the last few days to both of these seems vastly different. If we look at Syria, yesterday the United Nations General Assembly condemned Israeli occupation of the Syrian Golan Heights. President Trump's reaction was to put out a Truth Social quote that said he didn't condemn Israel, but he did say to Israel, nothing should interfere with Syria's prosperity, i.e. Israel, be very, very careful. On the other hand, Lebanon, which is just a few meters over the border from Syria, Morgan Ortega, who's the United States representative to Lebanon, was in Israel, meeting with the Prime Minister, the Defense Minister, and the Chief of Staff. She is set to deliver a message to Beirut, which is going to say either Hezbollah disarms or Israel is going to attack. Two vastly different approaches to two countries that lie side by side. Let's zoom, first of all, with your permission, into Syria. Israel last week carried out an operation in Beijing, just over the border. Maybe you can unpack this for us, because I don't know if Israel intended it, but this turned into an international incident, and it seems like we're getting some pushback.
Yeah, so let's start from the bigger picture and then drill down downwards.
Great.
You need to understand that the world is invested in Syria today. The entire world cares about that small desert in the middle of the Middle East. And let's unpack it for a second. So America's interest is stability in the Middle East, because remember, everything is in the background of China, America-China war to be. Okay, we're like, America's planning a war and preparing for a war with China 2027, 2028, and to concentrate.
Wait, you think America's preparing for a war with China in 2 or 3 years?
Oh, of course.
Like an actual war, we're talking tanks, or we're talking soft power?
So, no. The assumption is China will attack Taiwan around 2027, 2028.
Which will draw America into the conflict.
Obviously, the entire 96% of the entire high-end chips worldwide is in Taiwan today. Japan, the new Prime Minister of Japan just announced Japan will not set aside. China is trying to argue their ownership of Okinawa and some other islands towards Japan. There's a lot of stress in the Far East that America understands that it has to invest in preparing an army for once to deter China, and then to intervene if needed in the event of a war. But that's a given. The entire American military industry, national security is all addressing towards the China challenge.
So the Far East.
The Far East.
All right, so now bring us to the Middle East.
They need to bring stability to the Middle East, not to waste efforts and munitions and military capabilities in the Middle East. So they want to stabilize the Middle East now. Syria today is the core, like the center of gravity of stability in the Middle East. So why is that? China, on the other hand, is trying to unstable Syria to create chaos in the Middle East. How do you create chaos in the Middle East? Iran wants to hurt Israel again through smuggling weapons through Iraq, Syria, and to Hezbollah in Lebanon, and to, again, unstable the surrounding countries around Israel. So destabilization through Iran, destabilization China's interest in the Middle East through Syria, Turkey, as trying to Erdogan's plan to rebuild the Ottoman Empire. He's trying to destabilize Syria, to take control of Syria, and he's supporting Giuliani now by Turkish funds. Europe is begging for Syria to come to stability again, because they want to at least imagine that they will send out the 10 million Syrian refugees they have in Europe today back to Syria after Syria is stabilized. That is like the tension between two parts of the world, or three parts of the world, and Israel's in the middle. Israel in the short term wants stability too, because we want to calm down after the war, but we understand that we gained assets while taking the northern part of the Hermon mountain and having a perimeter inside Syria today in the eastern part of the Golan Heights, and we care about the Jews, but we want to prevent the Turks from taking control of Syria. So Israel actually prefers in the midterm now having some kind of instability. Now on a tactical level, Giuliani forces, and we need to be very clear about that, Giuliani forces are jihadist, Al-Qaeda people who are like the Muslim Brotherhood on steroids. Now, why is Trump working with them? Because again, he wants stability. Now, if you understand that front, small tactical events like we had last week, the end of last week, with 3 Israeli soldiers, officers actually being injured severely, but 13 Giuliani people in Beit Jan being killed by the Israeli Air Force. It's a tactical event that Israel went to stop a small team of people that we had intelligence that tried to attack Israel. Now, the second there's a not clear border in that perimeter, there will be more and more instability in that region. Now,
which could, one of these cells could theoretically go over the border and carry out an attack against Israel.
It's not even going over the border. Israel has posts inside Syria.
So it could either be to attack soldiers inside their posts,
yes,
but even the distances to Israel itself from there is not that far.
It's 10, 20 kilometers, depends where it is.
12 miles. I mean,
yeah, but that is distance. That's a perimeter. We prefer them attacking the IDF posts in there instead of coming inside Israel. And there's attacking the Druze. Now, if you understand the population in Syria today, they are jihadists. They're begging. I can show you videos of jihadist people begging for Giuliani to let them. Now, the assumption is Giuliani will be murdered. Like the Giuliani regime is not stable on the long term, because the second he cuts a deal with the West, so if it's a Tahadiyah, it's a short-term deal to stabilize everything, they will accept it. But if it's a long-term deal and he will really be part of the West, they will assassinate him and it will all dismantle and collapse again. So everyone understands this regime is a short-term strategy just to calm down, to buy time. And Israel understands that. Now, what's the solution? This is the important part. Israel has to offer a strategic solution for Syria. And what is that? Israel needs to come and offer to turn Syria into a federation of states. You need to have the Alawite state, the Druze state, the Sunni state, the Kurdish state, a variety of states working together, but to come to Europe and to America and say, listen, we want security, but this is our proposal to how Syria needs to look like. So in the meantime, the one imagination or the one plan that Trump and Europe sees, Germany and others sees, is either Giuliani controls it or chaos. If Israel comes with a third solution, we can be accepted in, okay, what's your plan? This is our plan. We need to secure the border here, build this as Jews' land. There will be the Sunni land, there will be the Kurdi land, and there will be a federation. And then, okay, that's a way to stabilize the region. But Israel is not offering a real solution. That's the real problem in Israel and Syria in the meantime.
The United Nations General Assembly yesterday, as I mentioned, condemned Israeli forces in the Syrian Golan Heights. Is that a red line? Meaning if the United States would say to Israel, withdraw right now, is that a red line for Israel? And does that open us up, if we move the border back to the actual original border, to another potential October 7th in the north?
On the short term, no. Israeli border in the Golan Heights is a very strong border. We have the hilltops of the volcano, like in the Golan Heights, a very clear territory that defended us in 73. And since then, we had a very clear geographical border. But today, after October 7th, it's not enough. And the perimeter we built there is strategically important, definitely in front of the chaos that we have in Syria. I don't see Israel withdrawing from Syria in the meantime. Definitely not without a clear solution for our security needs. Definitely not for the northern part of the Hermon Mountain. There's no real reason for us to give an unstable regime anything. But yes, we might get like orders from Trump to not attack and not being aggressive and helping Giuliani to come. So, Netanyahu yesterday said out loud, listen, we're coming with peace. We want to have a calm relationship with Giuliani. We understand America's and Europeans' necessity for stability there, but we will not pay the price of jeopardizing Israeli national security. We need to understand, Syria is not a threat today. Our problem is in 10 years from now, where it's going to be.
Okay, let's contrast this now with Lebanon. So here we see that President Trump is looking to, for all the reasons you said, I just want to recap them. From the United States perspective, they want calm because they want to preserve the resources for in a possible conflict in the Far East against China. They want to keep this calm. Europe wants it calm because they want potentially all the 10 million Syrian refugees to go back, correct?
Right.
We're also looking that we're trying to block, from Israel's perspective, we're trying to use Giuliani, hopefully, to block arms trade, which is China's goal, that there should be arms going from Iran through Iraq, through Syria into Lebanon,
right,
into Hezbollah.
Just to destabilize the region, so America will invest time, effort in the Middle East, so it less invest in the Far East.
Okay. Now let's contrast this with Lebanon, where it's very clear with President Trump's blessing that Ortega is going to be delivering a message that it's either, okay, guys, it's been 1 year. This is now 1 year since Israel pulled out. Hezbollah has recruited additional terrorist fighters. They've replenished some of their stockpiles. They've dug tunnels. They seem to be pretty undeterred. Why is Trump giving his blessing to Lebanon, which is, again, attached almost to Syria and not Syria?
First of all, the situation in Lebanon is very different than Syria for one reason. There's a real government there. It's not as stable as we wish, but it has a real government with a real majority of population who wants it. The biggest minority in Lebanon are the Shiites, the Hezbollah. But there's a big, strong coalition of minorities who oppose Hezbollah. But they are too weak to destroy Hezbollah. And in the meantime, the one, let's say, goal of the agreement between Israel and America regarding Lebanon is that America will force the Lebanese army to disarm Hezbollah, which there was never a chance for that to happen. But before Trump, we cut this deal taking that risk to give Trump on January 20th, like we ended the war in the north, in Lebanon, and Trump got an good beginning for his tenure now, these 4 years.
It's just important to add before you continue that this was a deal that Trump wanted. It wasn't a Biden deal.
Right.
This was Trump that really asked Israel.
After the elections, before Trump went
correct.
Office.
And
yes.
By the way, I'm sorry, just take you back 1 year before you go forward to the current times. Why do you think President Trump, it was important for him, since we're back in the same situation right now and it wasn't likely to succeed, that Israel pull out of Lebanon?
He wanted a win, and Israel gave up its national security in many aspects to give him that win. Now, Netanyahu had his reasons there because the IDF was unwilling to really go in a full-scale war up in Lebanon and invest its efforts there and destroy Hezbollah. So he traded here, and he gave Trump a good win to build a strong relationship with Trump on the long run, and taking the risk that we will need to fight again and restart a war inside Lebanon. But again, the difference between Lebanon and Hamas is there's a real opposition for Hezbollah inside Lebanon. There's a real government that doesn't want Hezbollah to run the country. It's just very weak and incompetent and unable to destroy Hezbollah. So Israel actually here gave up national security just for Trump. And American woke right need to understand that Israel is let's say, is America first in many ways in national security agenda here to get back some things from Trump on the long run. Now, the Lebanese government is very weak. It's unable to dismantle Hezbollah. The only, let's say, military power who can dismantle Hezbollah and disarm Hezbollah is Israel. Now, everyone understands that today. The question is when and how it's going to happen. In the meantime, Hezbollah already got $1 billion funding from Iran, buying weapons. They're smuggling it there through many ways, very hard for them. And Israel actually created a situation where we kill an average Hezbollah operative a day since the ceasefire. We killed over 370 Hezbollah operatives in the past year, high level. A couple of weeks ago, we killed the chief of staff, the head of the army of Hezbollah. But they still have support. They still have 40 to 50,000 soldiers, highly trained. We dismantled, we decapitated, that's a phrase in Israel we use, the leadership, the officer, but they're rebuilding it. And they're a real army, and they will never give up. So this morning, by the way, announced a negotiation between Israel and Lebanon directly to have some economic relationships and some deals. Again, that will never work out without Hezbollah taking out of the picture, and Hezbollah is strong. Why is America willing to force itself on Lebanon and not enforcing itself on Syria? These are two different countries. Lebanon, no one cares if it will trickle down to a civil war. It doesn't matter. It doesn't really threaten Israel, create chaos in the Middle East. Syria, on the other hand, is a center of gravity. The connection between Iran and Lebanon, the connection between Iraq and maybe even jeopardizing Jordan in the south, that is still an unstable state with the majority of jihadists. There's a difference between the Shiites, who are a minority now, very weak because of Iran's weakness, and Iran is in a weak situation now. So it's very weak. It's not a real strategic threat. The real threat is the Sunni Jihad, the Muslim Brotherhood, which is supported inside Syria with Turkey, with a lot of money and capabilities. And stabilizing that is a strategic effort for America.
Take us back a year and let's compare it to today. A year ago, Israel made a pretty deep incursion inside of Lebanon. You were there. You were inside. I was also inside, not as much as you, but you were actually involved in the fighting and in the destruction of some of those border cities to try to create a border. How has Israel maintained that border up till now? What's changed on the ground? Are we still inside Lebanon? And how effective is it? And are we protected again from an October 7th?
So the situation today on the border is Israel has 5 posts that are beyond the border, not in a serious way. It's a couple of, we're taking hilltops that are beyond the border. Remember, the Israeli-Lebanese border is a border that the elevated ground is on the Lebanese side. It's a very hard border to defend. So Israel took 5 points. By the way, a very not well-planned strategy. It was by chance in the rapid way that the deal was cut last year, but eventually we have these 5 points. They frustrate Lebanon and Hezbollah. We're still holding them, and we understand we will withdraw them sometime eventually in the future after we have some kind of deal, and Hezbollah will be weakened. That's how the IDF is spread today. But intelligence-wise, Israel is building rebuilding its intelligence capabilities in front of Hezbollah. And what very changed actually from 2 years ago, before October 7th, and what's happening today is the balance of power between Hezbollah and Israel. So since, let's say, the withdrawal from Lebanon in 2000, that Israel, the IDF and Israel withdrew from the security belt, we were deterred by Hezbollah. We were afraid of addressing that military challenge. And today, the IDF, again, as I said, is attacking on a daily basis inside Lebanon with drone strikes. If we need, we have soldiers entering Lebanon by foot. Israel is addressing the challenge in a very, very different way. And that's a good thing, at least in the meantime. How long will it sustain like that, I don't know. But in the meantime, it's good, but not enough.
I want to dig into this a little bit. This is called the post-October 7th defense doctrine of Israel, right? Military doctrine of Israel. Pre-October 7th, Israel was under kind of the sway of the United States. A lot of our upper-level generals, a lot of our staff had been sent to Harvard University, had been sent to the War College, and were adopting the United States view of containment, which, might work if your enemies are 2,000 miles away. Strike if you need to, pay them off a little bit, keep it quiet, keep it far away from us. But we did that for many years. And what we sacrificed, of course, was on October 7th, which almost was bound to happen because we didn't have an absorption area, right? There was no buffer to absorb an attack. And as you've spoken about on the podcast, this went against kind of the principles laid out by Ben-Gurion. Post-October 7th, Israel's now in this new paradigm to strike before the cancer metastasizes into a beast. Here, on the other hand, you have the rest of the world. U.S. still trying to do containment, like you said. Let's quiet down this area. How is Israel able to navigate the new post-October 7th security doctrine with the United States president and really the West that does not know what a preemptive strike is. They only know containment.
So I think the West does understand preemptive strike. And the best example is the attack on Iran. Just think about it for a second. I've been asked, I just came back from a couple of weeks in the States. I've been asked often again and again, why is Israel has a problem of explaining itself? Why is Israeli reputation so bad regarding Gaza? And I repeatedly ask the question, does everyone see on the media any condemning Israel on almost opening a third world nuclear war? By having a preemptive attack on Iran, for 12 days, we controlled a foreign state, 2,000 kilometers from Israel, totally controlling its air, totally attacking its military leadership, destroying its air defense systems, destroying its nuclear facilities, and no one cares. For one very simple reason. It was a clear success. It was a very, very clear, decisive victory. We had a goal, a very clear goal, and we achieved it. It was very short, brief success. And the world said, okay, nothing happened. Let's continue playing chess or whatever we do. And that is an example of how Israel should do it. Now, long wars of attrition, like the Gaza operation the past 2 years that we had, is exactly the opposite. If we have no real goals, no real strategy, no real successes that are clear, and you can grasp them and understand them as a normal Western sitting in your field, in your cornfield in the Midwest, you can't understand a long-term 2-year war of a small town in the middle of nowhere. So it's a very different approach from the world because of our approach towards the war. Same thing now. If we have a clear strategy in Syria and in Lebanon saying, listen, this is our plan. We want Syria to be a federation. And the federation will come, we have that, that's the plan. These are the maps. This is who will control. We already have a conference with the leaders of the Alawites, the leaders of the Kurdish. That's our solution. That's a preemptive diplomatic attack. Then we need to come with a solution. The same thing with Lebanon. If we come tomorrow and say, listen, we're willing to have a deal with you, but we will come and destroy Hezbollah. That's our deal. And if not, we will attack and we will do that. To be very clear with a long-term strategic plan that is very clear to the world. Now, if we, on the other hand, continue in, let's say, unclear, like going with on the waves of what's happening today, think, there was a tactical attack there, so yes, we'll follow it, we will not follow it. That's not a plan. That's a very bad situation for Israel. So the real solution here to prevent the world from, let's say, attacking us diplomatically on our efforts today in Lebanon and in Syria is by one thing, having a clear strategy how to address these challenges. The best thing that happened in Gaza, that's another good situation now, that at the end of the war, so we took 50% of the Gaza Strip. Hamas is still controlling the Strip, but there is a United Nations Security Council decision that Hamas needs to be disarmed. So we're ended like the war with, everyone agrees with Israel. We took 50% of the territory, understand the Hamas regime needs to be collapsed, and no one cares now. So if there's a clear solution, the world will be okay with that.
Let's play inside baseball for a second. I think the prime minister, to his credit, had wanted a clear goal post-October 7th, which was to go in and destroy Hamas. Maybe exactly how it would be done, day after type stuff. Maybe it wasn't exactly clear, and I think it wasn't clear for anyone, and sometimes you have to take the war to the enemy, again, as you and I have discussed, and we'll get to the day after once we deal with the day before the day after. The military establishment, along with the political establishment, along with the fact that we had hostages there, tied his hands to a great degree. Was there another way that we could have carried this out if we rewind the clock back to October 7th, that we could have actually had a clear victory there?
Oh, of course.
What would it have taken?
No doubt.
Kind of just giving up on the hostages and just moving forward? Or,
no.
What could we have done? So let's learn. It's not a condemnation. It's more of, okay, what can we take away from this?
So I'll respond to the answer, but let's look in Hamas's eyes. What did they think on October 6th? What was their plan for a second? Like, they know Israel is a big country. What was their plan? If you understand that Hamas knew that Israel would attack, but their goal was to just stay standing, like Rocky in the movie, Rocky Balboa, just staying on your 2 feet till the end of the battle. Even if you lose it, they won. That was their goal. And they understood that the time goes against Israel. if Israel understood the time goes against Israel, on the other hand, and we need to have a rapid, really clear strategy now to finish Gaza in the next 10 days or the next 3 months, yes, it was totally a different strategy for us and we would have succeeded. How would it have happened? The IDF, when it sits in its table, its planning table, and says, okay, what is the goal of this ground operation? It has decisive points of the enemy. Where is the critical point? We need to hurt it, and that will collapse Hamas. They thought that the Shifa hospital, if we get there, we will destroy Hamas, and that's over. And that's rubbish. That's nonsense. We call it the asymmetric war. The asymmetric enemy always diversifies its center of gravity to a place that you cannot destroy it. So Shifa Hospital was one center of gravity, but they had another one in Rafah, another one in Khan Yunis, another one in Tzirad. They were spread out and did a very good job because they planned, they assumed, and we played to their hands. The alternative was saying, listen, we're now doing scorched earth. We're destroying everything from north to south very quickly, very clearly, and not playing to what they planned us to do, to getting stuck in the middle of the tunnels inside the city of Gaza with hundreds of thousands of Palestinians and Gazans around us. This is the plan. We're not entering. We're destroying systematically until you stop. These are the list of demands. And we will stop only in the end of Rafah, from the north to the south. In 3 months to 4 months, it will be over. It was a very clear strategy because the center of gravity is not the leadership in the Shifa hospital, but it's the monopoly of power of Hamas on its territory and on its population. The second you kick down the population down to Rafah and you take over, so every meter the IDF is advancing from north to south stays under Israeli control the day after the war. That's it.
Hold the land.
Hold the land forever. The time is going against Hamas now. So you change the clocks. Now, that strategy could have worked. But, the national security leadership, the establishment, was unwilling to take territory. Strategically, for a variety of reasons. It didn't have the amount of munitions to do this, to take this approach.
Because they had been taken by the United States and sent to Ukraine.
It's more than that. It's because in the past 20 years, the IDF, for 30 years, the IDF was teaching its leading officers that we don't have any more big wars. We have small operations, tactical conflicts,
strikes,
but not real war, full-scale war with the entire 450,000 soldiers of the IDF fighting 3-front war, 4-front war. Okay, that's the IDF never prepared for that, so we dismantled our brigades and our divisions, and they couldn't do that. So they decided to do something very limited in this operation. We could have won the war much faster in a strategic way. And we need to thank Netanyahu here, and this needs to be very clear. Netanyahu is the only one in Israeli leadership that went till the end. If it was in the hands of Herzi Halevi, Gadi Eisenkot, Yoav Gallant, Benny Gantz, definitely Naftali Bennett, Ronen Bar, all the military leadership, the establishment of the IDF would have stopped the war after 2 months. They tried. They spoke about it again and again repeatedly. Let's give all the prisoners to Hamas. Let's take our prisoners back, hostages back, and let's end the war now. And Netanyahu fought more than he fought Hamas, he fought the establishment and forced them and strong-armed them to fight in Gaza. And that's why we are today with 50% of the Gaza Strip in our control, with 100% of the hostages back home. Unfortunately, many of them dead, but that was unfortunate in the middle of the attack. But with the very clear deterrence and destruction of Hamas.
You know, I think that there's also, we can look to kind of prove your point. You know, I was a spokesman in the war for the first 100 days. If we look back to November, again, a month into the war, Hamas returned over 100 hostages in November right up front. Why? Because the shock and awe of the IDF, Hamas actually thought they were going to be destroyed. They were like shocked into let's immediately
I disagree with
give something back. Yeah, so what do you think? Why do you think they gave back
the first deal was the women, the elderly, and the children.
Mm-hmm.
And that deal was against Israel's interest. Because the kids and the elderly were actually a liability on Hamas. And it's a good thing to have a liability on Hamas. Now, we cut a deal to take out that liability on Hamas. No, we want all the hostages. We want all of them, and we will destroy you until that comes. You kidnapped kids. You need to bring those kids for free. What they got is 10 days of no IDF oversight with drones, stopping the war, giving them time to rearm and reorganize. That was a disaster deal. I was opposing that then. We want all the hostages now. And that deal could have come then. Now, I was against the deal. I think Hamas should have surrendered, and we had the international support for that. And actually from there, we did, again, our the Israeli best way of diplomacy is a failure one, and we did that again and again. We very good on tactical level, how to do things like special ops. We're very bad in diplomacy, and unfortunately, Netanyahu caved for the public opinion to cut this deal.
Let's now take these lessons learned. What happened in Gaza, the pressure from inside, civilians dying because of Hamas, but Israel being blamed. Let's now move back up north to Hezbollah. Hezbollah, we heard very little in this war. I mean, I was in the Second Lebanon War. You were in the Second Lebanon War. There were civilians that died in the Second Lebanon War, and those claims were brought against Israel. It also forced the end to a war very, very quickly. This time it didn't seem to happen. I don't know if it's because it paled in comparison or because they had managed to flee to the north. If we are going to go back into Lebanon, and it sounds from what you are saying, it's almost for sure going to happen because we cannot rely on anyone but the IDF to destroy them. If we go back in, how are we going to prevent what happened in Gaza, massive mass casualties from stopping us, getting drawn into a war of attrition? How are we going to do this? Paint the picture.
So I don't think Israel is going to attack in a ground invasion soon in Lebanon for several reasons. One, the IDF is exhausted. It needs time to reorganize and rebuild. So that's one thing. The second part is we're giving now diplomacy time to organize. In the meantime, when we have these all drone attacks and Air Force attacks on whatever the rebuilding, in the meantime, it's enough. And if we understand that it's in the meantime, it's enough to, let's say, stall its rebuilding of Hezbollah, to verify and give Trump the benefit of negotiating it and trying to dismantle Hezbollah. But everyone understands that's not going to happen. I think the attack with Hezbollah will take several years from now. It's not going to happen soon. And when that happens, let's see. I think it will happen it's either we attack or they will have a civil war inside Lebanon. Because if Hezbollah is starting to, if the Lebanese government is starting to disarm Hezbollah, that will go to a civil war. If they don't do that, Hezbollah is starting to rebuild itself, and it's going to start a civil war. So either way, Israel will come in the middle and try to solve it. It will take several years to unfold. In the meantime, Hezbollah is very strategic, and it's not attacking directly. And we should take advantage of that and poke them as much as possible when they lay low, but to prevent the rebuilding. That's why stability with Giuliani in Syria is also an Israeli interest here. Because the second it's unstable, Iran can bring more munitions for Hezbollah. So this is like a four-dimension chess game, but I don't see a full-scale military operation in Lebanon soon.
Let's talk a bit more right now about, again, yesterday, the United Nations General Assembly condemnation. If you look at the list of countries, many of these are countries that we are actually actively selling weapons to, meaning the countries that Israel's actively selling weapons to, and I'll give an example in a minute, are actively on the public stage condemning Israel for our presence in Syria, which according to many of us is necessary to protect Israel, stop the smuggling from Syria into Lebanon. Only Israel can possibly do that right now, and to prevent possibly an October 7th from the north. Germany, case in point. Today, there's a big parade in Germany, a military parade, not in front of the general public. You've got all the senior officers that are in Germany right now watching the Arrow 3 missile interceptor developed by Israel, deployed in Germany for the first time, set on display. Germany voted against Israel yesterday. Now, for years, Israel's had this diplomatic kind of plan where we say, okay, you know what, hang us out to dry in public and hug us in private. Do you feel that we should still be pursuing this policy? Should we still be selling weapons to countries that condemn us, or should we be using our leverage to try to force a diplomatic change?
So let's, again, go back to the bigger picture about the military industry that is happening in this world. So Europe is building armies. America is rebuilding its army, and the military industry is rebuilding in Europe and in America. Now, today, the only very, very capable military industries are America, obviously China, but Turkey and Israel. And so the only places that Europe can buy weapons, sophisticated, high, and tested very successfully in the battlefield is from Israel today. America is not selling Europe weapons because all the production lines are dedicated now to rebuilding the American army. So when America goes to, when Europe comes to America and says, we want to buy a weapon, said, no problem, we'll sell you, you will get it in 2035. So it's irrelevant for Europe that wants to build an army in 2-3 years. When it comes to France or Italy, the other big military industries in Europe, they say, yes, we have an anti-missile system, but it's like 40% success. You're going to get it in 2030, not in 2035. And it's very expensive, 4 times the price. So they ask, okay, what do? We go to the Israelis. And they have to buy from Israel. And the number one export of military industry from Israel is to Europe. So we need to know that as a basis. Now,
and they're quietly, whoever looks in the 14th page of every newspaper, one after another, they're all lifting their trade restrictions against Israel that they started after October 7th. You're talking, even Ireland, Israel's probably greatest ideological opponent. And even they very, very quietly release restrictions to certain Israeli goods.
Right, but they're not selling to us. We're selling to them.
We're selling to them.
So
exactly.
their BDS is bullshit because they're not selling to us anything. We're not buying from them. We're selling them. So they're like boycotting Israel is like, for them, it's signal verge. Like, we need to buy from you. We can't boycott you and buy from you. Spain, Portugal, like all the countries in Europe are buying weapons from Israel today. Well, we need to get to the reason why they're buying weapons. Russia will not end the war with Ukraine. And this is something that's a blind spot for Trump, I think. That he doesn't understand that Russia, it's not a utilitarian deal that you can cut with them. It's a very deep national identity issue, Ukraine, in the Russian eyes. There's a book in 1996 written by Carter's, one of his national security advisors, about the Russian one. And when Boris Yeltsin was the president of Russia, he said, listen, Ukraine is like our land. Even then, and it's very deep in the Russian national identity. And America said, we will never fight for you. So Article 4, Article 5 of the NATO treaty will never be used by America to support Europe. And Europe is in stress to build armies now. And their timeline is 2-3 years in this until Russia rebuilds its army and can open a second front in Europe. So they're terrified of Russia aggression and the continuation of the war in Ukraine. And they know America will not support them. So they're in a very desperate need for weapons. And that puts Israel in a very good situation. How can we leverage that? We should. And that's a new message to Israel. Israel's international confidence needs to rise from being like the bullied kid in class that is capable but is a nerd, but we can bully them and take advantage of. We need to change our perspective on ourselves. And we need to start fighting that and taking advantage. But we don't need to be arrogant. We need to do that smart because there's still a big influence of Arabs inside these countries. So how do we negotiate? What do we get? We should take the money, first of all. Now, I don't care about a vote in the council, the UN Council, not a security one. I don't care about that. That's important. Now, on the other hand, we should care about other things. So how to tread smartly in between it's inside baseball that stands inside the Foreign Affairs Ministry and the Prime Minister office. I think Gideon Sa'ar today, as the Foreign Minister, is doing a very good job in that, building new alliances with India, with the Far East, with other countries, with the Central Asia, Kazakhstan and others, Azerbaijan. We have very good relations with them. And to take advantage of that in front of Germany. But you need to understand, when Germany is now building a very big military industry, and they're shifting their car factories into tank factories, and they're buying factories in Romania and in Hungary, and they're building a big industry today, the number one vendor needs to be Israel. So we want to be there to sell them our sophisticated technology for their big industry so we can buy back stuff if we need. to have a good negotiation deal. On the other hand, take advantage of these deals in a diplomatic way, but a smart way. Don't be too greedy on that.
I'm going to push back as we wrap up here on that specific point. I feel like this is a really outmoded approach. To the time where Israel could strike the Osirak reactor in Iraq, everyone said, no, 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 no. And inside, everybody shook the Israelis' hand saying, wow, you guys did it. What a great job. I think that may have been true in the 80s and 90s, 2000s, I'm not sure. Today, when public opinion is so rampant and seems to have an effect, maybe not on President Trump, because he seems to be immune to what is affecting most other leaders, but certainly Biden and possibly a future leader, when public opinion sways so much, and you have the leadership of these countries, which in many cases are even more left than the population of their countries, right? The representatives in the UN, the leadership of these countries are very vocal, but when it comes to the Eurovision, you can see that the people in the country are voting for Israel. There's like this disparity. When they need us so much, I understand that we need a degree of money, but there needs to be some type of awareness and a message sent to our ambassadors to use a bit of our clout at this point. Something cannot be acceptable. Again, when you're talking about our honor and our dignity, some point this has to come out of the back room into the front room and say, listen, you just condemned us in the United Nations Security Council or in the United Nations General Assembly. We're going to push off your order by 2-3 years. I mean, this is how everyone works. Why should Israel? My thing is Israel should begin to deploy this. I agree with you intelligently, but this needs to be a diplomatic shift because I think our diplomats were brought up on the knees of people who said, no, just keep everything quiet and we'll be okay in the back room. Don't rustle. It's not working.
So I think these things do happen today, but we don't need to be, as I said earlier, too greedy with that because you want to trap them deeply inside our military industry. We want them to be relying on our military industry more and more. Now it's the beginning of this rebuilding of their army. But the more they rely on our military industry, the less easy it's for them to separate it.
I see.
Now in this period of time, they're building their industry. We want to be embedded in that industry today so they cannot lose it on the long term.
The subscription model.
Exactly.
Right?
Subscription model.
A very low upfront cost, like you're an espresso machine, and then,
Exactly. Now they have the opportunity, okay, we understand the Israelis are bullying us on that, so let's start our own factory. But in the meantime, play around with them, let them totally rely on our military industry, expand ours, sell them as much as possible, and when they really need us, then strong arm them. I think we agree on the long-term strategy, but how to do it, and these are details that I don't know all of them, but we need to be very smart on how to use power. Now, you cannot yell wolf, wolf, or threaten having an uncredible threat. We need to use our threat credibly. We need to use our diplomatic power credibly. If you strong-arm someone and he has alternatives, I think he will move there if you strong-arm him too much. So it needs to be a very smart way to do that. It's not because I don't think strongly about ourselves. I think we prefer to strengthen ourselves much more than we are today. Remember, we're 2 years after the war. We're a stronger economy, but in 5 years, I believe we'll be a much stronger economy, a much safer state, and our military industry will be much bigger following all the orders that we will get now from Europe, not only, but mostly from Europe now. So I think leveraging it now, it's too early. And 5 years from now, we can do much more about that.
Wamiad, I have to say, and I've said this for every time I speak with you, I want to pull whatever funds I have in the S&P and move it to the Israeli Deltec. I always feel like this is a message to our listeners. I'm not getting any, commission on this whatsoever, nor am I taking any responsibility. And you seem to be correct because you've been saying this. You and I have done these podcasts for years now. It's actually been well over a year. And in that time, there was a zinuk, a massive, massive growth in the Israeli stock exchange.
Yeah, number 3.1 needs to be echoed in everyone's minds now. 3.1 will be the Israeli dollar shekel currency rate. It's now 3.26, 3.25, playing around. It will get to 3.1 and 3. That's the shekel. It used to be 3.7 and 3.9 at the beginning of the war.
It was 4.5 not that long ago.
No, not 4.5.
No, about 10 years ago.
4, but if you understand the strength of the shekel in the Israeli economy, if you look at the Israeli stock exchange during the second year of the war, it's crazy. The amount of investments. The currency is an outcome of people with dollars coming and buying shekels. They sell dollars and buy shekels. There's high demand for the shekel, and that's the currency. And if you understand economics, you understand the rebound of the war, this is what's happening now. Israel is rebounding. It could rebound much more. And I believe it will. This is only the beginning. It's the real estate that will explode in Israel because of demand, because of Americans coming to Israel, companies coming. I just had a very long conversation yesterday with one of the biggest VCs in Israel. They're exploding with demand for investors to come and open new funds and invest in new companies. The military industry is expanding. I have many of my friends who finished the war, fighting in many units, and now they started their own companies with very sophisticated ideas out of the experience of the war. So a lot of small military industries are coming with very good solutions. There's an explosion now. Go even to the cultural and spiritual perspective of that. They're like, all the Israelis want to succeed now. They're eager to prove themselves again. They came to life after the war. If you understand the Israeli spirit during the war was very low. Like we're afraid of losing our country in some ways. And when we won the war, and it needs to be very clear, we won the war in a 7-front war. Now we should prove for why we fought for. And economy is only one of them. There's a baby boom now. A lot of kids are being born now because people came back to life. Now, yes, there's still threats. I'm going to Syria back in Miluim in 2 weeks from now. It will be like, it's frustrating for my wife, but we're still doing that. But aside of that, we're still doing business. There's a lot of a very beautiful future for Israel. And if we can take it for a quote, the next decade of Israel will be the best decade of Israel ever.
Well, you heard that here, ladies and gentlemen. wAmiad, I want to get you back here from Syria, or when you're in Syria, to get your on-the-ground insights like we did a few months ago. Last question I'm just going to ask you, you'll answer, and then we're going to wrap. President Trump invited Prime Minister Netanyahu for the 5th time to the White House. I mean, I'm not sure, Bibi, if he realizes if he's working on Balfour or if he's working in Pennsylvania Avenue. Why did he do it? If he goes, what's that conversation going to be like?
So first of all, obviously, I don't know. But I assume it will be stabilizing the Middle East. I think we'll be signing some kind of deal with Indonesia. I think the Saudi Arabia deal is less chance for that to happen in like the full Abraham Accords deal. Maybe there will be some declaration. The reason that there's a difference between the two is Indonesia wants to join the OECD. And to join the OECD, they have to have bilateral relationships with all the countries of the OECD, and Israel is one of them. They will have to have a real deal with us, part of the Abraham Accords. It's a non-Arab Muslim country in the Far East, which America has interest to lock down China there, and there's a lot of industry and minerals there. It's a very important country for Trump and for Israel, for Indonesia. It's a win-win deal. That will happen, I believe, in the White House then. The Saudi is very different. Let's compare Saudi to the Emirates. Emirates doesn't have a real population. So they can do whatever they want as politicians. They run like a small family business. They can do whatever they want. Saudi Arabia, MBS has a problem. He has a real population. And there's 90% disapproval of MBS's moves in front of Israel. They don't want to deal with Israel. They're anti-Semites, they're Muslims, they're jihadists. It's a real problem inside Saudi Arabia, and he can do whatever he wants. So I think he will be some kind of declaration. They will do business with us. It will be a deal with America, like recognizing Israel in some ways, but not a full-scale deal. So I think Saudi Arabia, something, Indonesia, full-scale relationship. They will add Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan for that. But I think that's like the event that will happen there. And obviously Syria and Lebanon in that. And they're interested again in Gaza. I think everyone understands that nothing's going to happen in Gaza in the next couple of years. They will do some limited attempts to build a new Gaza next to the old Gaza, West Berlin, East Berlin style, to try to honey trap some of the Gazans inside their new West Berlin. I don't think it's going to work, but let them try. I don't care.
wAmiad, I want to thank you, and I want to tell our audience that if they want to learn more, you are the head of, as I mentioned at the beginning, one of, if not the most important institutions, academic institutions. It's a cultivation of leadership called the Israel Chirut Center, the Israel Liberty Center. Where can they get more information?
So obviously our website, if you Google Cherut, H-E-R-U-T, the Center for Israeli Liberty, you'll find us on Google. YouTube, you'll see very good videos of ours. I think the future of Israel is based on leadership. And what we do is educating and cultivating the future leadership of Israel. And again, to get to the future, the best decade of Israel, it doesn't happen by itself. It happens by people who make these decisions and make that happen. And we need good people. So that's what we do.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.